Good morning, students. Today we are going to see electrochemical principle of metallurgy. See, when you are just trying to reduce the oxides of active metals, that is like sodium, potassium, these oxides they are not or they cannot be reduced using carbon. That's why they can be extracted only using electrochemical methods. The reason why they are not reduced using carbon is that means they are not thermodynamically feasible. So now for this, what we should know is that we should know the electrochemical series. This name seems to be little new for you, but it's not like that because you all have learned something called as reactivity series in year 10 standard, and this electrochemical series is also more or less the same. So you will have a reactive metal and more reactive, less reactive comparison will be there. So how this electrochemical extraction or electrochemical method is done is we are going to take the metal salts in fused or solution form, and we are going to use a suitable reducing agent, or it is going to undergo electrolysis and you will get the metal. So this is the usual way, and whenever we want to just to do the electrochemical this thing, we are going to use metal which is more reactive, and the other one will be the solution containing less reactive metal. So if I want to extract silver from any silver salt solution, I can use copper here. The reason is copper is more reactive than silver, so that it can displace silver from its salt solution. So it will be forming cupric ions, and then silver will be obtained in the elementary form. This is exactly the same what we have seen in the cyanide leaching. That means we have just used zinc to displace gold and silver there in cyanide leaching. So one more example we have, in case if you want to obtain copper from the salt solution, cupric ions has to be just converted to copper. Then we have to use a metal which is more reactive than copper. In that case, we are choosing zinc. As zinc is more reactive than copper, it can displace copper from its salt solution. So now zinc will be going into the solution as zinc 2 plus, and the copper will be obtained in the elementary form. So this is the example, two examples I have given you here. One is obtaining silver, another one is copper. When silver, you want to get silver, you are using copper as copper is more reactive than silver. And when you want to obtain copper, you are using zinc as zinc is more reactive than copper. These two reactions are feasible, and you are getting a positive EMF for these reactions. Why we are suddenly talking about EMF here is that we are going to just move on to the next step. Like you all know from thermodynamics, you have learned thermodynamics in 11th standard, that delta G naught is equal to minus N of E naught. And you have learned the feasibility condition, spontaneity condition for free energy. The free energy delta D naught should be negative, then only it is spontaneous. If I want this free energy to be negative, then I want this EMF to be positive. Then only this free energy value can be negative, and then the reaction can be a spontaneous one. For that reason only, in the previous page, we have just selected those reactions, that is the construction of those cells where the EMF value is a positive value. Now, moving on to the next, one more very important example of electrochemical extraction, that is the electrochemical extraction of aluminium. Why we are using this electrochemical extraction for aluminium? That is the first question. We all have learned something called as alkali leaching, in which alumina is obtained from bauxite and alumina Al2O3 is obtained from bauxite. In case if you want to convert this alumina into aluminium, we can use carbon because carbon is a reducing agent. So if I just use carbon and allow carbon to react with alumina, then aluminium can be converted, sorry, I'm sorry, alumina can be reduced to aluminium. That's what we all think, but it doesn't happen because reduction of alumina by carbon leads to aluminium carbide formation instead of aluminium. Therefore, there is a necessity to have some other method, and that is the electrochemical method. And in this method, we are going to name this method. It is called as the Hall-Héroult process. Okay, and we are going to see the diagram for this method. First, let us see the diagram, and after the diagram, we can just I hope you can see the diagram. See, this is the electrolytic cell we are using in the Hall-Héroult process, and you can see the outer covering here, the outer layer. The outer layer is made up of iron, and that is the uh, cathode here. Okay, and the next one is inside you have a carbon anode, and these carbon anodes are present, and you're going to take a molten alumina along with Na3Al F6. What do you mean by Na3Al F6? It is called cryolite. And you can see here that this carbon is acting as an anode, and here this outer layer will be acting as a cathode. And as electrolysis proceeds, aluminium will be deposited on the cathode, and it can be just taken out through this outlet. So molten aluminium will be coming here, and it will be taken out through the outlet. Now we can move on to the explanation of this Hall-Héroult process. Just a second. Okay, you can see here we are taking a cathode which is iron tank lined with carbon. That means you will have an iron tank, inside that it will be lined with carbon. And you have anode. You have seen just now in the diagram that the carbon rods are acting as anode. And we are going to just have an electrolyte here. Electrolyte usually generally we say the salt solution. Here we are going to take 20% alumina which is obtained from the bauxite ore. That is the alkali leaching which we have already seen, and along with that you are going to take molten cryolite. The formula you have just seen in the diagram, Na3Al F6, and 10% of calcium fluoride is also added to the electrolyte. Why we are adding calcium fluoride? For these two reasons which I have just quoted here, which will be just lowering the melting point of the mixture, and it will also increase the conductivity of the electrolyte. And all these things, let me repeat once again, it is a cell which is given in the diagram, and you are having a cathode which is an iron pack lined with carbon. An anode is carbon rods immersed. Then electrolyte will be combination of three. One is alumina, then calcium fluoride, and then cryolite. Instead of that is calcium fluoride, which can also be called as fluorspar. And all these things are maintained at a temperature of 1270 Kelvin. And what is going to happen here? As electrolysis is carried out, alumina will be converted to aluminium ion and oxide ion. You all should know that it should be balanced in both ways, that as well as the element as well as the charges. 2 aluminium, 3 oxygen, and the charges also should be balanced, 6 plus 6 minus. Now, these aluminium ions will move. This oxide ion at the anode is going to react with the carbon rods, that is the carbon rods or the anodes present there, and they both combine to form carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. So you balance it so that it becomes carbon dioxide. And here you can just find out one thing, that as this oxide ion reacts with carbon rods, the carbon rods are getting consumed, and you're going to replace it continuously. And what the aluminium will be formed in the anode, as you have seen the reaction already here. It is formed in the cathode, and it can be just settling down at the bottom. And you have seen in the diagram that there is an outlet from which you can just remove the aluminum formed. What is the net electrolysis reaction here is that the first equation which I have marked should be multiplied by 2 and the second should be multiplied by 3, so that you can just cancel these electrons and you will get the net electrolysis reaction. This what you have seen now is called as Hall-Héroult process. That is the electrochemical extraction of aluminium. I have told you the necessity of this process because when alumina is made to react with the reducing agent carbon, it is not reduced to aluminium, it is just converted to carbide. That is the reason we are doing this method. Now we are going to see the very important part of metallurgy. Already we have seen the steps, as you have seen in the first session and the second session, that number of steps are involved in the metallurgical process. In that, the first step is the selection of the ore, and then crushing, and then concentration, roasting, smelting, all these things, and finally you are getting the metal in the form of impure one. And it is a metal which is extracted by any method, either by electrochemical method or by the usual method. It will have some impurity. So to remove the impurities or to obtain the metals of high purity, we are going to have several techniques, and these techniques are just identified based on the difference and properties of the metal and the difference in their impurity present. And this refining is very much important so that you get a pure form of the metal. A number of refining process we are going to see here, and in that the first process what you are going to see is distillation. This word is little familiar to you because we have seen in the purification lesson number of distillation, fractional, and then simple distillation, then distillation under reduced pressure, like that. So here the difference in the boiling point is the original distillation principle, but here in this case we are going to use mainly for low boiling metals. That means like zinc and mercury. And I have also mentioned that boiling point of zinc and mercury, and they are also volatile metals. Usual distillation setup is should be ready. I didn't give the diagram because you have seen the diagram already. If you want, you can see your 11th standard textbook. And here in the retort, that is a round bottom flask, you are going to take the metal, and you are going to set up, everything will be there, and it will be allowed to boil as it reaches. For example, I'm going to take mercury, its boiling point is 630 Kelvin. When it is reaching 630 Kelvin, it will be converted into vapor and it will be condensed, and you can just collect the pure metal as a distillate, and impurity will remain in the round bottom flask. Similarly, if you want to do for other metals, you should know their exact boiling point so that you can just convert that into vapor at the boiling point, and finally it will be obtained as a pure metal. Now, liquefaction. This is something new which you have not heard of. We have a diagram, I'll show you. And this is mainly for metals which is having a very low melting point. The reason is that the metal will have a low melting point. The impurity, which is the last stage, like crude metal, we say that metal will have a low melting point and the impurities are going to have a high melting point. So we are going to just heat the crude metal and allow it to flow on a sloping surface. You can also call it as a sloping earth. And in this, what happens is the crude metal is heated just above its melting point, and the molten pure metal, you can see the diagram here. So we are going to pour the impure metal here through this place, and down you can see that this is the heating part. That is here the it is going to come down like this, and you are going to heat it. As you heat, as the metal is having a low melting point, it is going to melt down and it will be collected in the receiver which is kept here, and the impurity will be left behind. You can see this is the impurity, it is marked in the diagram, and this is called as a sloping surface, or as given here it's called as a sloping earth. Okay, so let me explain liquefaction once again. Liquefaction here is The second method of purification here, that is the refining. Here you are going to take metals with a low melting point, and it is going to allow to fall the sloping earth, and you are going to heat it. And when you heat, as it is having a low melting point, it is going to melt down and get collected here, and impurities will be remaining here. Moving on to the next method, that is a very common, very reliable, excuse me, and all of you know, that is called electrolytic refining. It is done on an electrolytic cell. When it is done on an electrolytic cell, you should have a cathode, you should have an anode, and you should have a electrolyte. I have mentioned everything with respect to a general example. I'm not quoted any specific equation here. So cathode should be always the pure metal, and anode should be the impure metal, and the electrolyte should be an acidified aqueous solution of the salt. One example I'll tell you now. If I'm going to refine, the impure zinc should be converted to zinc, like refining, electrolytic refining of zinc. I'm going to take pure zinc metal as a cathode, impure block is taken as anode, and it will be the zinc sulfate with sulfuric acid, acidified with sulfuric acid. And what is going to happen during this electrolysis is the Mn plus ion, that means anode. You have the anode, and the anode reaction is this: the metal present in the anode, impure metal, will be converted to the ionic form by the laws of electrons, and this ions will move into the electrolyte, and from the electrolyte the ion will move towards the cathode, where it will undergo reduction to form the metal. So this is what happening here. It is a very common reaction. Let me take it for zinc. Zn will be converted to Zn2 plus 2 electrons, and these Zn2 plus accept 2 electrons in the cathode, so that the Zn will be deposited on the cathode. So what is going to happen as the electrolysis proceed? The anode impure block will be getting oxidized, and these ions will move into the electrolyte. From the electrolyte, it will be converted to the metal at the cathode. So anode will be just the size of the anode, or otherwise you can say anode is getting consumed as it undergoes oxidation, and cathode becomes thick. That means the pure metal is getting coated over cathode, that is, it is getting deposited over cathode again and again, and the electrolyte concentration does not change. Why it doesn't change is because the reaction is going to happen. It's going to go into the electrolyte, then only it will enter into cathode, so the electrolyte concentration remains same. Here, the less electropositive metals, that is the impurities, are just collected in the form of anode mud. Why you call it as an anode mud? Because it is collected at the bottom of the anode. You can see the diagram of this I have given at the end of the notes. You can see the diagram later. Then finally, we have one more refining, that's called a zone refining. This zone word is very important here, zone refining. It is mainly based on the principle of fractional crystallization. This is also familiar to you. That is the difference in the solubility. That process called fractional crystallization. If I have A and B, the solubility difference of A and B in a particular solvent, and they can be separated using by fractional crystallization. And this fractional crystallization we are having here, and it is suitable for refining semiconductors like silicon, germanium, and impurities present here are more soluble in molten metal than in the solid form, and we are going to carry it out in an inert atmosphere to prevent the oxidation of the metal. Let us see the diagram now. The impure metal is taken in the form of this horizontal rod. You can see here impure germanium rod written here, and you have this orange color ring, which is the circular heater, and you're going to just move this ring from one end to the other end. As I have already explained, that the impurities are present in the molten one, that is the molten zone. This is the orange portion, which is the molten zone containing the impurities. And as I just sweep this circular heater, or as I move the circular heater, this is just taking away all the impurities with it. And you are going to do this again and again. When you do this again and again, the other end of this rod is getting, just the metal is getting crystallized. And when I do this again completely, when you just finish the process, you can just have the pure metal on one side and the impure part on the other side so that you can separate the pure and the impure form. Now we are going to move on to the last refining process, and that is called as a vapor phase method. Why it is called vapor phase method is that we are just one second. Yes. This is a vapor phase method, and here the impure metal is made to react with a suitable reagent so that it is converted into a volatile compound, and that volatile compound can be decomposed to form a pure metal, and the reagent will be obtained once again. So this reagent is getting regenerated in the product, that is as a byproduct you can say, and that's why it can be once again used in the first step. There are two main process here in the vapor phase method. One is Mons process, another one is von Erkel method. They are very specific one. Mons process is used for refining nickel and iron, where they can be converted into the metal carbonyls, and the metal carbonyl decomposes to form the pure metal. Let me take the impure metal nickel, and it is allowed to react with carbon monoxide so that nickel tetracarbonyl is obtained, and this is a highly volatile one which can be decomposed at a little higher temperature, 460 Kelvin, so that you get a pure nickel. So impure metal first converted to the volatile compound, that is a nickel tetracarbonyl, and then it is decomposing to form the pure metal. So this is one of the example of vapor phase method called as Mons process. And the next one is called von Arkel's method. What is von Arkel method? Here is mainly suitable for zirconium and titanium, and here you can remove these type of impurities like oxygen and nitrogen impurities. And you can just, I'm giving the reactions with respect to titanium. Titanium reacts with iodine so that it will be converted to titanium tetraiodide, which is in the vapor form, and it is a highly volatile compound. And it just undergo decomposition, that is, it decomposes at 1800 Kelvin when you are heating it over a tungsten filament. When this is passed over a tungsten filament at 1800 Kelvin, titanium is obtained in a pure form and iodine is just removed. This iodine can be taken to the first step, to, that is, to carry over the further process. And impure titanium is converted to the pure one. And this is the last part of the lesson. After this, we have a few applications which will be done as PPT later. Thank you.